Hello again, my name is Peter Waters, G30JV from Waters and Stanton Limited, and this is the third and probably the final video I'm going to do on end-fed antennas. This time I want to concentrate very much on the practical side of installing the end-fed antenna. Just to do a very brief recap, the end-fed antenna is an antenna which is very easy to install and requires no antenna tuner other than perhaps the one that is installed in the radio, because it presents a very low VSWR to start with. But the accent is very much on easy installation, an antenna which is multi-band but uses the whole antenna. There's no traps at all, which means to say there's no losses. Now there are two critical parts to this type of antenna. The first is that it should be a half wave at the lowest frequency. So if we take a 20 metre length of wire, that is a half wave on 40 metres, and it'll work on the harmonic. So 40 metres, 20 metres, 15 metres, 10 metres. If we double the length of wire and say 40 metres, which means to say it's resonant as a half wave on 80 metres, then that will work on 80, 40, 20, 15 and 10, and it will also work on the walk bands, because if you work out the multiples from 3.5 megahertz, then you'll find that it's very close to the walk bands. The other critical factor is the RF transformer, and the RF transformer's job is to match the very high impedance at the end of an end-fed half wave to 50 ohms to match your transceiver. Now this is not too difficult to do. If you use the right type of ferrite, the right number of windings and some corrective capacity, then you'll find that you can match that antenna very well, and you'll get quite low SWRs. Certainly you won't need an external ATU. So let's take a look in the garden now and take a peep at a typical installation. Here you can see I've used a spider pole, a fiberglass pole, which I advocate very much because they're not overly expensive, they're very tough, very easy to install. And I've taken a wire back to the house and I've actually put the transformer, the matching transformer, just inside the window. So this is really one of the easiest installations that you can imagine to get on the HF bands. Now, I'm not a very good artist, so you'll have to excuse the lack of drawing skills. The first and simplest way of installing the antenna, I suppose in some ways, is just to run it in a straight line. So we're going to assume that we've got a 20 metre length of wire which will cover 40, 20, 15 and 10. That's the horizontal length of wire, and at one end we put the transformer and then feed it there with coax. That will take up around about 66 foot of garden. Now you may have a short garden, so it's quite okay to bend it. So let's suppose we just take this wire, say 30 foot down the garden. We can then put a bend in it there to make up the length. That will be 30 or 35 feet. Those two lengths are interchangeable, but by bending it there you can get the antenna into perhaps a garden that otherwise you couldn't get it into, and it makes very little difference. Bear in mind we're now looking down on the antenna. It's a bird's eye view. Now another way of installing it is as an inverted L. Now an inverted L is really what the title suggests. We have a vertical section there, and then we have a horizontal section there, and the transformer is at the base there, and we feed it with coax there. Now the length of those two legs is not really important. What I suggest would aim for something like 30 feet if possible there, and then the balance horizontally there. Now the 30 feet can be achieved by using one of our spider poles, which I do strongly suggest you consider, because they are very cost effective, very lightweight, very easy to install, and very easy to telescope down if you want to do some adjustments. If it's not possible to get that horizontal, don't worry. You can take that at an angle like that. Put the dotted line in there, or straight dotted line, I'm afraid, but there we are. So you can take that down at some sort of angle to complete the length of the antenna. Now, one other way of doing it is to erect it as an inverted V, and this probably is one of the most popular ways of doing it. Inverted V, again, is, as the name suggests, we have a leg that goes up there, and we have a leg that goes down there. And that point there is where we support the antenna. And again, I would suggest a spider pole. With a spider pole, it's easy to get that up to around about 35 feet, which is a very decent height for an antenna. The angle there is not too critical. That's probably quite acute. I would suggest you take it out a bit if possible. But don't worry if you can't. You have to make the best of what you've got. And then we feed it at that point there. And that's your inverted V. And it doesn't matter if that goes down to just a couple of feet, 2 or 3 feet above ground. That's fine. The main thing is to go for height in the centre there. And because it's an inverted V, you've naturally reduced the overall length of the antenna quite dramatically. So an inverted V is not only an easy antenna to erect, but it's also an easy antenna to get into quite a small garden. Right, and lastly, we'll take a look at the matching unit. This is the matching unit I developed. It's called High Match, and it has an SO239 at one end there and a screw terminal at the other end for the wire. Strongly suggest that when you connect it up, you put the wire through the eyelet a couple of turns first of all, and then onto the terminal so that the strain is taken on the eyelet there. And it works on 3.5 to 30 megahertz, handled 200 watts, and it's an essential part of the end-fed half-wave antenna. And that's it. Well, thanks for watching. I hope that you found it interesting, and don't forget, if you've got any questions, you can always call us down at Portsmouth, call our sales team, or send us an email, or check the website. From Waters and Stanton, remember, we take care of you. Now, I'm not very good at drawing, so you'll have to excuse that, but basically you can have an inverted V. An inverted V is like that. It's what the name says, and we can have the feed point there, the transformer there, and then feed it with coax there. And you can actually support the antenna in the centre with one of our spider poles, which is a very cost-effective way of installing it, and you'll have no problem in getting that up to around about 35 feet, which is great for HF.